Lisa Grant rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the clock on her console. 3 more hours until her shift ended. She had been watching the deep space monitors for 6 months now, and nothing ever happened. The job was boring, but someone had to listen for signals from beyond the solar system. The UES Sentinel was the most advanced listening post humanity had ever built. It floated in the cold space near Neptune, far from Earth's radio noise. Lisa and her team watched for any sign that humans were not alone in the universe. So far, they had found nothing but empty space. Lisa took another sip of her coffee and stretched in her chair. The screens in front of her showed the same patterns they always did. Random noise from distant stars, radiation from old explosions, and the quiet hum of space itself. She had memorized every normal sound by now. Then something changed. A new signal appeared on her screen. It was weak, but it was different from everything else. Lisa sat up straight and adjusted her headset. The signal had a pattern to it. It repeated every few seconds, like someone tapping out a message. "Computer, analyze signal on channel 7, Lisa said. The computer's voice was calm and flat. Signal shows artificial origin. Mathematical sequences detected. Attempting translation. Lisa's heart started beating faster. She had dreamed of this moment for years. First contact with alien life. She quickly called her supervisor. "Commander Peters, you need to see this," she said into her comm unit. Commander Bill Peters was a big man with gray hair who had served in space for 20 years. He walked over to Lisa's station and looked at her screens. His face was serious as he watched the signal patterns. "How long has this been coming in?" he asked. "Just started a few minutes ago," Lisa replied. "The computer says it's artificial. Someone or something made this signal." Peters nodded slowly. "What's the source location?" Lisa checked her instruments. "The signal is coming from the Kepler system. That's about 40 light years from here." "Commander, this signal left that system 40 years ago." The computer beeped softly. Translation complete. Displaying message. Words appeared on Lisa's screen. She read them out loud, her voice shaking slightly. "To anyone receiving this message, we are the Valani of the Kepler system. Our worlds are under attack. A great enemy has come from the dark between stars. They destroy everything they touch. Our fleets are broken. Our cities burn. We send this message as our final hope. If there are others out there who can hear us, please help. We do not have much time left." The bridge became very quiet. Peter stared at the message for a long moment. Then he picked up the communication device that connected directly to Earth Command. "This is Commander Peters on the Sentinel. I need to speak with Admiral Morrison immediately. We have a priority 1 situation." While they waited for the connection, Lisa played the message again. There was something in the alien words that made her feel sad. These beings, the Vellani, were afraid and desperate. They had sent their cry for help into space, not knowing if anyone would ever hear it. "Admiral Morrison here," came a strong voice through the speaker. "What's your situation, Commander?" "Sir, we have received what appears to be a distress call from an alien species. They call themselves the Vellani. Their system is under attack by some kind of enemy force." There was silence for several seconds. Then Admiral Morrison's voice came back, more serious than before. "Commander, are you certain this signal is genuine?" "Yes, sir. Our computer systems have verified it. The signal shows clear signs of artificial intelligence. The mathematical patterns match what our scientists predicted alien communication might look like. Send me everything you have. I'm calling an emergency meeting with the Earth Council. This changes everything." Lisa continued monitoring the signal while Peters prepared the data files for transmission to Earth. The message kept repeating, over and over. Each time she heard it, Lisa felt more strongly that they had to help these people. Dr. Amy Foster arrived on the Sentinel 12 hours later. She was Earth's leading expert on alien communication theory. She was a small woman with short, brown hair who always seemed to be thinking about complex problems. "Show me the signal," she said as soon as she arrived. Lisa played the recording for her. Dr. Foster listened carefully, taking notes on her tablet. She asked the computer to break down the mathematical parts of the message. "This is incredible," Dr. Foster said after studying the data. "The signal uses prime number sequences to establish intelligence. Then it switches to geometric patterns to build a basic language. These beings are very smart. Can you tell anything else about them?" Peters asked. Dr. Foster nodded. "From the way they structure their language, I think they are peaceful. The message has no aggressive words or military terms except when describing their enemy. They seem to be explorers and traders, not warriors." Lisa looked at the alien words on her screen. "What about this enemy they mention? The ones attacking them? They call it the swarm in their language. From what I can understand, it seems to be some kind of hive mind that consumes entire worlds. The Valani describe it as an ancient evil that travels between star systems." The communication panel lit up with an incoming message from Earth. "Admiral." Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Lisa could see the flags of all Earth's nations. "Commander Peters, Dr. Foster, the Council has reviewed your findings. We have made a decision that will change the course of human history." Lisa held her breath, waiting to hear what Earth's leaders had decided. "We cannot ignore a cry for help from innocent beings. Humanity will answer the Valani distress call. I am ordering the largest fleet ever assembled to depart for the Kepler system within 72 hours. Peters saluted. "Understood, sir. What are our orders?" "Continue monitoring all signals from the Kepler system. We need to know everything possible about the situation before our fleet arrives. Dr. Foster, I need you to prepare a complete analysis of Vellani language and culture. Our people will need to communicate with any survivors we find." After the Admiral signed off, Lisa looked out through the observation window at the distant stars. Somewhere out there, alien beings were fighting for their lives against a terrible enemy. Soon, human ships would cross the empty space between worlds to help them. She thought about the brave men and women who would make that dangerous journey. They would leave behind everything they knew to help strangers they had never met. It made her proud to be human. The signal from the Vellani continued to repeat its desperate message. But now it would not go unanswered. Earth's children were coming to help. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the command deck of Luna Station and watched the greatest fleet in human history take shape. Ships arrived from every corner of the solar system. Warships from Mars, supply vessels from the asteroid belt, and troop carriers from Earth's orbital stations. In 3 days, they had assembled 50 of humanity's most powerful vessels. The flagship would be the UES Defiance, the newest and strongest ship in the Earth Defense Fleet. It was a kilometer long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Captain Rick Taylor had been chosen to command it. He was a tall man with dark hair who had served in the Mars colonies for 15 years. Everyone respected him as a fair leader and skilled fighter. Captain Taylor walked through the corridors of his new ship, meeting his crew. The Defiance had over 2,000 people aboard. Each person had an important job to do on the long journey ahead. In the navigation room, he met Ben Clark, a young officer who had studied star charts his whole life. Ben had calculated the exact course to the Kepler system using the newest hyperspace engines. "Captain, the journey will take 3 weeks, Ben explained, pointing to a star map. "We'll be traveling faster than any human mission has ever gone before. Are you confident in the route?" Taylor asked. Ben nodded firmly. "Yes, sir. I've checked it 20 times. The hyperspace lanes are clear, and will drop out right at the edge of their solar system. Next, Taylor visited the engine room where Chief Engineer Sandra Mills was checking every system. Sandra was a short woman with red hair who could fix anything that broke. She had worked on spacecraft engines for 12 years and knew every bolt and wire. "How are we looking, Chief?" Taylor asked over the noise of the massive engines. "Everything's running perfectly, Captain," Sandra replied, wiping grease from her hands. "These new hyperspace drives are amazing. We'll get there fast, and we'll have plenty of power for whatever we find." The weapon systems were equally impressive. The Defiance carried rail guns that could fire metal slugs at incredible speeds. It had nuclear torpedoes that could destroy entire buildings. Most importantly, it had experimental weapons that human scientists had been developing in secret. Taylor met with his weapons officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper, in the armory. The room was filled with enough firepower to level the city. "Sir, our rail guns can punch through any known armor," Cooper explained. "The nuclear torpedoes have smart guidance systems, and these new plasma cannons can cut through almost anything." "What about defense?" Taylor asked. "We have the best shields humanity has ever built, plus armor made from materials we discovered in the outer planets. We're ready for a fight. The most important part of the mission would be the Marines." Colonel Frank Rodriguez commanded 3,000 soldiers who would board enemy ships and fight on alien worlds. Rodriguez was a tough man who had fought in every major conflict of the past 20 years in the Marine Bay. Rodriguez showed Taylor the equipment his troops would carry. The soldiers wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster. Their weapons could fire different types of ammunition, depending on what they faced. "My people are ready, Captain," Rodriguez said. "We've trained for every situation we can think of. Boarding actions, ground combat, rescue operations. Whatever we find out there, we can handle it." Sergeant Matt Baker was checking his squad's equipment nearby. He was a veteran who had fought in the underground cities of Mars. His men trusted him completely. "Sergeant, are your troops ready for this mission?" Taylor asked. "Yes, sir," Baker replied. "We know this might be different from anything we've faced before, but we've trained hard. We won't let you down." Corporal Julie Ross was teaching a group of younger Marines about alien contact procedures. She was smart and quick, perfect for dealing with unknown situations. "Remember," she told her squad, "we might be the first humans these aliens have ever seen. We need to be ready to fight, but also ready to help innocent people." Dr. Amy Foster had spent the last 3 days studying everything they knew about the Vellani and their enemy. She had set up a research lab on the Defiance where she could continue her work during the journey. "Captain, I've learned more about both species," she told Taylor during a briefing. "The Vellani seem to be peaceful traders. They explore space, looking for new friends, not conquest. They've never fought a war like this before. What about their enemy?" Taylor asked. Dr. Foster's face became serious. "The swarm is different. They're not like us or the Vellani. They seem to be a hive mind that thinks as one giant organism. They don't negotiate or trade. They just consume everything in their path." She showed Taylor pictures that the Vellani had transmitted. The images showed worlds covered in strange organic structures, cities that had been turned into twisted versions of themselves. "They don't just destroy," Foster explained. "They change things. They turn entire planets into something else, something that serves their needs." Taylor studied the disturbing images. "Do we know how to fight them?" "That's what we need to find out. The Vellani weapons don't seem to work well against them. But our weapons are very different. We use kinetic energy and explosive force. They might not be ready for that." Communication Officer Lisa Grant had been transferred to the Defiance to help with alien contact. She had been listening to Vellani signals for days, learning their language. "Better. Captain, I'm picking up more transmissions, she reported. The signals are getting weaker. I think their situation is getting worse. The messages Lisa intercepted painted a grim picture. The swarm had taken 3 of the 5 inhabited worlds in the Kepler system. Millions of Velani had died or disappeared. The survivors were hiding on the remaining 2 planets, but the enemy was closing in. Admiral Morrison visited the Defiance on the final day before departure. He met with Captain Taylor and his senior officers in the main briefing room. This mission is more important than just saving the Velani, the Admiral explained. We're announcing to the galaxy that humanity exists. How we handle this will determine how other species see us for generations to come. Taylor nodded. We understand, sir. We won't fail. I know you won't. But remember, you're not just representing Earth. You're representing the idea that good people help each other, no matter how different they are. The final preparations were completed as the fleet took its positions. Supply ships loaded the last containers of food and ammunition. Engineers finished their final checks on every system. Marines said goodbye to their families through video calls to Earth. Captain Taylor stood on his bridge and looked out at the other ships in the fleet. Each one carried brave men and women who were willing to risk everything for strangers they had never met. It made him proud to be part of the human race. All ships report ready for departure, Ben Clark announced from his navigation station. Taylor picked up the communication device that connected to the entire fleet. This is Captain Taylor to all ships. Today, we make history. We're going to show the galaxy what humanity stands for. Let's bring our new friends home. The great fleet turned toward deep space and engaged their hyperspace drives. In a flash of light, they disappeared from the solar system, beginning their journey to answer an alien cry for help. The human fleet traveled through hyperspace like ghosts moving between worlds. Captain Taylor stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and watched the strange colors that swirled outside the windows. Hyperspace looked like a twisted version of normal space, where stars became streaks of light and time moved differently. Navigation report, Taylor called to Ben Clark. We're making good time, Captain, Ben replied, checking his instruments. 18 days until we reach the Kepler system. All ships are staying in formation perfectly. The journey gave the crew time to prepare for whatever they would find. Taylor had ordered constant training exercises. Every day, different departments practiced their emergency procedures. The crew needed to work together like a single organism when the fighting started. In the communications room, Lisa Grant spent her time learning more about the Velani language. She had received dozens of new transmissions during their journey. Most were recorded messages that had been broadcast over and over, but some seemed to be new signals from survivors. Captain, you should hear this, Lisa said during one of Taylor's daily visits to her station. She played a recording that had been transmitted just hours earlier. The voice was different from the previous messages. It sounded younger, more frightened. This is Research Station 7 on Kepler Prime. My name is Dezeska. I am a scientist studying star formations. The swarm creatures have taken control of our orbital platforms. They are changing our people into something else. I have sealed myself in the underground laboratory, but I can hear them in the walls. They are learning how to break through. If anyone receives this message, please know that we tried to fight. We were just not prepared for such evil. The message ended with strange sounds in the background. Scratching noises and something that might have been screaming. Taylor felt his jaw tighten. How old is this transmission? It reached us 6 hours ago, but it was sent 3 days ago from their time, Lisa answered. Captain, this Iska might still be alive. If we can find her, she could tell us important information about the enemy. Dr. Foster had been standing nearby, listening to the recording. The name Iska suggests this is a female scientist. In Velani culture, scientists have high social status. She would know technical information about both Velani and swarm technology. Taylor nodded. Keep monitoring for any signals from her station. We'll need all the help we can get. In the Marine Bay, Colonel Rodriguez was putting his soldiers through brutal training exercises. The men and women practiced fighting in zero gravity, boarding hostile ships, and rescuing civilians from dangerous situations. Every scenario was designed to be harder than what they might actually face. Sergeant Baker led his squad through a mock battle inside a replica of an alien ship. The corridors were narrow and filled with obstacles. His Marines had to clear each room while protecting imaginary civilians. Move fast, but stay careful, Baker shouted as his squad advanced. These swarm creatures might be hiding anywhere. Check every corner, every shadow. Corporal Julie Ross practiced first aid procedures with the medical team. If they found Velani survivors, the humans would need to treat alien injuries with equipment designed for human bodies. Remember, we don't know how their biology works, she told her medics. What helps humans might hurt them. We need to be ready to adapt our procedures quickly. Dr. Foster spent most of her time in her laboratory, studying every piece of information they had about the swarm. The more she learned, the more worried she became. The enemy was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Captain, I need to show you something, she said during one of their daily briefings. I've been analyzing the Velani descriptions of swarm behavior. I think we're dealing with something that can adapt to any weapon used against it. She displayed images on the main screen, showing Velani ships that had been captured by the enemy. The vessels had been changed, covered with organic material that pulsed like living tissue. The swarm doesn't just destroy ships, Foster explained. They convert them. They turn Velani technology into part of their own fleet. Every ship they capture makes them stronger. Taylor studied the disturbing images. What about their weapons? How do they fight? From what I can tell, they use biological weapons. Living missiles that can change direction in flight. Ships that can repair themselves during battle. And something the Velani call corruption beams that can change matter at the molecular level. Chief Engineer Sandra Mills had been listening from her station. Doctor, do you think our weapons will work against them? Foster considered the question carefully. The Velani use energy weapons similar to our old laser technology. The swarm has adapted to defend against that. But our kinetic weapons work very differently. We fire solid projectiles at extreme speeds. They might not be ready for that kind of attack. The weapons officer, Lieutenant Cooper, looked up from his console. Our railguns fire metal slugs at nearly light speed. Even if they can adapt to energy weapons, physics is physics. A chunk of metal moving that fast will punch through anything. As the days passed, the crew developed a strong sense of unity. They were no longer just individual soldiers and sailors. They had become humanity's representatives to the galaxy. The weight of that responsibility brought them together. Captain Taylor made sure to visit every section of his ship during the journey. He talked to the cooks preparing meals, the engineers maintaining the engines, and the young recruits who had never been in combat before. Everyone needed to know that their captain cared about them. Nervous about the mission? He asked a young Marine named Pete Wilson, who was cleaning his rifle for the 10th time that day. A little, sir, Pete admitted. I keep thinking about those aliens who asked for help. What if we're too late to save them? Taylor sat down next to the young soldier. Pete, the fact that you care about people you've never met shows why we're making this journey. The galaxy is full of species that only think about themselves. Humans are different. We help others because it's the right thing to do. On the 15th day of their journey, long-range sensors detected something that made everyone nervous. Ben Clark called Captain Taylor to the bridge with urgent news. "Captain, we're picking up energy signatures ahead of us. Something big is moving in the space between star systems." Taylor looked at the sensor displays. Strange readings showed objects that didn't match any known technology. They were massive and seemed to be alive somehow. Could it be the swarm? He asked. Dr. Foster studied the readings carefully. The energy patterns match what the Valani described. "Captain, I think we found scout ships from the enemy fleet." Taylor felt his pulse quicken. They were still 3 days away from the Kepler system, but the enemy was already moving to intercept them. The element of surprise was gone. "All ships, battle stations," he ordered. "It looks like the fight is coming to us." The human fleet prepared for their first contact with the enemy that had terrorized an entire star system. Soon they would learn if human weapons and tactics could defeat an enemy that had never known defeat. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system and immediately saw the horror that had befallen this part of the galaxy. 3 of the 5 planets that once held Velani cities now glowed with a sickly green light. Strange organic structures covered their surfaces like cancer eating healthy tissue. "My God," whispered Ben Clark as he stared at the sensor readings. "Captain, those planets are still alive, but they've been completely changed." Captain Taylor stood on the bridge of the Defiance and felt anger growing in his chest. The swarm had not just killed the Velani. They had turned entire worlds into twisted versions of themselves. This was not war. This was corruption of the worst kind. "All ships maintain formation," Taylor ordered through the fleet communication system. "Sensors are detecting multiple contacts moving toward us." The swarm ships appeared on their screens like nightmares made real. They were not built from metal and circuits like human vessels. Instead, they looked like giant sea creatures that had learned to swim through space. Their hulls pulsed with veins that carried glowing fluid. Tentacles writhed around weapon ports that opened and closed like mouths. "Contact," called Lieutenant Cooper from the weapons station. 30 enemy vessels approaching from multiple directions. "They're big, Captain. Each one is at least as large as a heavy cruiser." Dr. Foster studied the enemy ships through the main viewer. "Captain, those aren't ships in the way we understand them. They're living creatures. The swarm has grown them specifically for space combat." The first swarm ship fired without warning. A beam of green energy lanced out toward the human destroyer U.E.'s Ranger. The beam struck the ship's shields and began to eat through them like acid. "Ranger reports shield failure," came the voice of Admiral Morrison through the communication system. "All ships return fire. Let's show them what human weapons can do." Captain Taylor turned to his weapons officer. "Cooper, target the lead enemy. Ship, fire all railguns." The Defiance shuddered as its massive railguns fired in sequence. Metal projectiles the size of telephone poles flew through space at incredible speed. They struck the swarm ship and punched completely through its organic hull. The enemy vessel writhed in pain, green fluid spraying from the holes in its body. But instead of dying, it began to close its wounds. New tissue grew over the damage, like fast-healing skin. "It's regenerating," Cooper reported with amazement. "Captain, that thing is healing itself." "Fire nuclear torpedoes," Taylor ordered. "Let's see it heal from that." 6 nuclear warheads streaked toward the wounded swarm ship. They detonated in a series of brilliant flashes that lit up the darkness of space. When the light faded, the enemy ship was gone. Nothing remained but glowing particles drifting through space. "Direct hit," Cooper announced. "Target destroyed." But there were 29 more swarm ships closing in on the human fleet. The battle became a deadly dance as both sides maneuvered for advantage. The human ships moved in coordinated formations, their captains trained in centuries of naval warfare. The swarm vessels moved like a pack of hunting animals, trying to surround and overwhelm their prey. The heavy cruiser UES Vengeance found itself surrounded by 5 enemy ships. Captain Helen Davis ordered her crew to prepare for boarding as the swarm vessels moved close enough to extend mechanical tendrils toward her hull. "They're trying to board us," she reported to the fleet, switching to close-quarters combat protocols. Colonel Rodriguez had been waiting for this moment. "Marines, prepare for boarding action. This is what we trained for." Sergeant Baker led the first squad to repel the boarders. The swarm creatures that broke through the hull were unlike anything in human nightmares. They looked like insects, the size of dogs, with too many legs and mandibles that dripped acid. But they died just like any other enemy when human bullets found their targets. "Keep firing," Baker shouted to his Marines. "Don't let them establish a foothold." The creatures were fast and deadly, but they had never faced human military tactics. The Marines used coordinated fire and tactical grenades to destroy entire groups of boarders. Within minutes, the Vengeance was clear of intruders. Meanwhile, Dr. Foster was analyzing the enemy ships from her position on the Defiance. "Captain, I'm detecting weak points in their hulls. The organic armor is strongest around their weapon ports, but there are soft areas near what might be their engine sections." "Cooper, target their rear sections," Taylor ordered. "All ships. Concentrate fire on the back half of enemy vessels." The human strategy began to work. By focusing their attacks on the weaker parts of the swarm ships, they could destroy the creatures before they had time to regenerate. One by one, the enemy vessels died in bursts of nuclear fire. In the middle of the battle, Lisa Grant picked up a new transmission. "Captain, I'm receiving a signal from the inner system. It's coming from Kepler Prime." The voice that came through the speakers was weak but clear. "Human ships, this is Scientist Thais Iska, broadcasting from Research Station 7. I have been monitoring your battle. Your weapons are effective against the swarm. I can provide tactical information about their weaknesses." Taylor felt a surge of hope. "Thais Iska, this is Captain Taylor of the Earth Fleet. We're here to help. Are there other survivors?" "Yes, Captain Taylor. Thousands of my people are hidden in underground shelters on this world and on Kepler 4, but the swarm has surrounded both planets. They are preparing for a final assault." Dr. Foster leaned toward the communication panel. "Daisa, this is Dr. Foster. Can you tell us about swarm ship construction? How do they build these vessels?" "Dr. Foster, the ships are grown and massive. Hive structures on the planets they have corrupted. Each ship is connected to the others through a biological network. If you can destroy the command ships, the others become confused and easier to defeat." Lieutenant Cooper was studying his tactical display. "Captain, I think I can identify the command ships. They're the largest ones, and they're staying back from the main fighting." Taylor looked at the battle situation. His fleet had destroyed 15 swarm ships, but they had lost 2 destroyers and taken heavy damage to several other vessels. The enemy command ships were hanging back, protected by their remaining fighters. "All ships, new target priority," Taylor announced to the fleet. "We're going after their command vessels. Follow the Defiance in a spearhead formation." The human ships formed into a tight wedge, with the Defiance at the point. They charged straight toward the largest swarm ships, their weapons firing continuously. The enemy fighters tried to intercept them, but human coordination and firepower carved a path through their ranks. The first command ship was twice the size of any vessel the humans had seen. It looked like a massive jellyfish with dozens of weapon ports and communication tendrils reaching out to connect with other ships. "That's our target," Taylor said. "Cooper, load our biggest nuclear warheads. We're going to kill this thing permanently." The Defiance fired every weapon it had at the command ship. Railgun slugs, nuclear torpedoes, and plasma cannon beams all struck the creature at once. The massive organism writhed and began to die, its connection to the other ships failing. Immediately, the remaining swarm vessels became disorganized. They stopped working together and began attacking randomly, like wild animals, instead of a coordinated force. "It's working," shouted Cooper. "The other ships are losing coordination." The human fleet pressed their advantage, destroying the confused. Enemy ships one by one. Within an hour, the space around Kepler Prime was clear of living swarm vessels. Debris from the organic ships drifted through space, like the remains of some prehistoric battle. "This is Captain Taylor to all ships," he announced. "Excellent work, everyone. We've won our first victory against the swarm." But Taylor knew this was just the beginning. The real enemy was on the planets below, where millions of swarm creatures had turned 3 worlds into their breeding grounds. The hardest fighting was still ahead of them. Captain Taylor looked at the corrupted planets through the main viewer of the Defiance. The 3 worlds that the swarm had taken glowed with unnatural light. Massive organic structures covered their surfaces like tumors growing on healthy skin. This was where the real enemy lived, and this was where the final battle would be fought. "Daiziska, can you tell us about the hive structures on those planets?" Taylor asked through the communication system. The Villani scientist's voice came back weak but determined. "Captain Taylor, each planet has one primary hive that controls all the others. The main hive on Kepler 7 is the largest. It produces new swarm creatures and coordinates attacks on other worlds. If you can destroy it, the others will become much weaker." Dr. Foster studied the sensor readings from her laboratory. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy readings from those hive structures. They're not just breeding grounds. They're weapons factories and command centers, all combined into one organism." Admiral Morrison's voice came through the fleet communication channel. "All ships, prepare for planetary assault. This is going to be the hardest fight humanity has ever faced. Remember, we're not just fighting for the Villani. We're fighting for every free species in the galaxy." Colonel Rodriguez gathered his Marines in the main hangar bay of the Defiance. 3,000 soldiers in powered armor stood ready for the most dangerous mission of their lives. Each Marine carried weapons designed to kill in the worst conditions imaginable. "Marines, listen up," Rodriguez shouted so everyone could hear. "We're going down to those planets to finish what the swarm started, but we're going to finish it our way. These creatures think they can consume everything in their path. They're about to learn what happens when they mess with humans." "Sergeant." Baker checked his squad's equipment one final time. His soldiers had trained for months to fight in hostile environments. Their armor could protect them from acid, radiation, and the vacuum of space. Their weapons could adapt to any enemy they encountered. "Remember your training," Baker told his Marines. "Watch each other's backs, follow your orders, and show these creatures why Earth is called a death world." Corporal Julie Ross led a team of specialists who would plant nuclear charges in the heart of the hive structures. She had studied the layouts that Thais Iska provided and knew exactly where to place the explosives for maximum damage. "We get in fast, plant our charges, and get out faster," she explained to her team. "These things have never faced human demolition techniques. We're going to teach them about controlled explosions." The assault began with a massive bombardment from the human fleet. Every ship fired its biggest weapons at the hive structures. On Kepler 7, nuclear warheads exploded like miniature suns across the planet's surface. Railgun rounds punched deep craters into the organic buildings. The swarm creatures fought back with everything they had. Beams of energy lanced up from the planet, striking human ships with corrupting force. Several vessels lost their shields and had to retreat for repairs. But the human weapons were doing terrible damage to the enemy. "Direct hit on the Northern Hive complex," reported Lieutenant Cooper. "That structure is completely destroyed." Captain Taylor watched the destruction through his ship's cameras. Where the hive had stood, only burning craters remained. But there were dozens more structures scattered across the planet's surface. "Launch the assault shuttles," Taylor ordered. "It's time for the Marines to finish this job." Hundreds of small spacecraft launched from the human fleet and dove toward the corrupted planet. Inside each shuttle, Marines prepared for combat, while pilots dodged enemy fire from the surface. The shuttles were fast and heavily armored, designed to get soldiers into impossible situations. Sergeant Baker's shuttle was among the first to land near the main hive structure. The building was enormous, stretching into the sky like a twisted mountain made of living tissue. Openings in its walls pulsed like breathing, and strange sounds echoed from deep inside. "Move out," Baker commanded as his squad left their shuttle. "Remember, we're here to plant charges and rescue any Villani survivors we can find." The Marines advanced through corridors that seemed more like the inside of a giant creature than a building. The walls were covered with a substance that felt warm and wet. Strange lights pulsed along veins that carried glowing fluid throughout the structure. Swarm creatures attacked them immediately. The aliens came in waves, crawling from holes in the walls and dropping from the ceiling. They looked like nightmares, with too many teeth and claws that could cut through metal. But human weapons cut them down just as fast as they appeared. "Keep moving," Baker shouted over the sound of gunfire. "Don't let them surround us." Julie Ross and her demolition team reached the heart of the hive structure. The central chamber was massive, filled with organic machinery that pulsed with life. Thousands of new swarm creatures were being grown in pods that hung from the ceiling like fruit on a diseased tree. "This is it," Ross said to her team. "Plant the charges around those main support structures. When these go off, this whole place comes down." Her soldiers worked quickly, placing nuclear devices at key points throughout the chamber. The charges were small, but incredibly powerful. They would create a chain reaction that would destroy the entire hive from the inside. Meanwhile, other Marine teams were fighting their way through different parts of the structure. They found chambers filled with captured Villani who were being changed into something horrible. The Marines rescued as many as they could and carried them toward the exit. "We found survivors," reported one team leader, "but they're in bad shape. The swarm was doing something to them." Dr. Foster's voice came through their communication systems. "Get them to the medical shuttles immediately. We'll do everything we can to help them." As the Marines fought their way back to the surface, the swarm launched a desperate counterattack. Thousands of creatures poured out of the hive structures, trying to overwhelm the human forces with sheer numbers. The air filled with the sound of gunfire and explosions. But humans had been fighting overwhelming odds since they first picked up weapons on the plains of Africa. The Marines formed defensive circles and used their superior firepower to create killing fields around their positions. Every swarm creature that charged them died in a hail of bullets. "Charges are set," Ross reported. "All teams evacuate immediately. This place is going to be a crater in 60 seconds. The Marines ran for their shuttles as fast as their powered armor could carry them. Behind them, the massive hive structure began to shake as the nuclear charges prepared to detonate. Swarm creatures shrieked in fear as they realized what was about to happen. The explosion was visible from space. The main hive disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire that rose into the sky like a second sun. The shock wave flattened everything for miles around and sent tremors through the planet's crust. "Primary target destroyed," announced Captain Taylor. To the fleet, all teams report successful evacuation. But the battle was not over. There were still hive structures on the other two corrupted planets. Admiral Morrison ordered simultaneous attacks on both worlds. Human ships bombarded them from orbit, while Marine teams landed to plant more nuclear charges. The swarm fought desperately to protect their remaining strongholds, but human tactics and weapons proved superior in every engagement. Within 12 hours, all 3 corrupted planets had been cleansed of swarm presence. The organic structures burned in nuclear fire, and the creatures that had terrorized the Vellani were extinct in this star system. On Kepler Prime, Baziska emerged from her underground shelter to see human soldiers helping Vellani survivors. The aliens had never seen anything like these warriors from Earth. They fought with a combination of high technology and primitive aggression that made them nearly unstoppable. Captain Taylor, Veziska said through the communication system, "My people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You saved not just our lives, but our entire species." Taylor stood on his bridge and looked out at the Kepler system. The 3 corrupted worlds were now clean again, their surfaces cooling from the nuclear fires. The 2 surviving planets showed signs of life returning as Vellani survivors emerged from their hiding places. "Daisiska, we didn't come here for payment," Taylor replied. "We came because it was the right thing to do. That's what humans do when good people are in trouble." Admiral Morrison's voice came through the fleet communication system. "All ships, mission accomplished. We're establishing a permanent base in this system to help with reconstruction and to watch for any return of the swarm threat." As news of the victory spread through the galaxy, other species began to take notice of the newcomers from the small planet called Earth. Some were grateful for humanity's willingness to fight evil. Others were frightened by the destructive power that humans commanded. But all of them knew that the galaxy had changed forever. The human fleet had answered an alien cry for help and proven that some species would risk everything to protect the innocent. Earth's children had announced their arrival among the stars not as conquerors, but as guardians willing to stand against the darkness that threatened all life. In the years that followed, the alliance between humans and Vellani would grow into something larger, a coalition of species dedicated to mutual protection and the defense of freedom.